Everyone. Thanks for joining the Polo Show in the morning. I'm joined today by Ted from Ted Talks Ball. Y'all know him on Twitter, Ted H Niners. We're going to talk about the offseason, free agency, get into some quarterback stuff, and this article that was put out not too long ago. We're going to discuss the context of that. But good morning, everybody, and let's get going.
Wide open, touchdown, 49ers. And to Draymond. Purdy. Watch Stafford go deep and picked off. We're able to do week 3 in that matchup. Toss to Jones and big middle linebacker Fred Warner made the stop.
All right, hello everyone. Once again, welcome to the Polo Show in the morning. I'm joined today by Ted from Ted Talks Ball. Ted, how you doing, man?
Hey, better now, Chris. Thanks for having me on. Excited to chop it up with you here. I was happy to have you on Ted Talks Ball a while back. Happy to be here on your channel. I guess technically we're on both channels since we're, restreaming, live streaming to Ted Talks Ball as well. But just excited to be here with you to talk a little ball today. Obviously, we've got some Niners topics that we're going to talk about. And I don't want to steer your show, but I would love to talk some Warriors with you too, because I know you're a big Warriors fan. Just look at your intro, which is great.
We can gloss over some Warriors.
Is that Roscoe's Mister who did that intro for you?
You know Roscoe made that video. He said it's one of his favorite intro videos. I love that video. It's awesome.
It's really good. It's really good.
And that's perfect because we were just in a group chat arguing with Roscoe about the Lakers and the Warriors, so we can gloss over some Warriors today for sure. What's up, Tanya? But yeah, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, go ahead and do so. I like to do jersey giveaways. I did a Nick Bosa jersey giveaway. Tanya won that one when we hit. I think I did it for 150 subscribers, so I'm going to do another one. I'm thinking probably 350 subscribers. I'm going to go with a Hufanga jersey most likely. So yeah, go ahead and subscribe. I cover the Niners. I do Warriors content also. I'm going to try to get into doing more of those consistently. But let's dive into some Niners.
Wait, you forgot you write for All 49ers FN now.
I also do write for All 49ers FN with Grant Cohn and Ted also.
Although I'll say, I was doing a lot of the preview summary stuff, and now you've kicked up here in the off season. It's kind of perfect where I left off. You picked up, so welcome aboard and great work you're doing there.
Yeah, Chris. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. And for you. Let's dive into some of this Niner stuff. So let's get out of the way. The first thing we're obviously going to talk about is the quarterback position. That's kind of the conversation around this team the last few years. And now that it seems like, based on what John Lynch said with his media availability, that probably ship has sailed. It's kind of done with Jimmy Garoppolo. It's not really going to be a thing we even need to talk about today. But now you have another controversy with Trey Lance and Brock Purdy. But Brock Purdy is going to be coming off that torn UCL, so Trey should be ready to go, in much better shape than Brock Purdy, obviously, if he's going to have that surgery. Now, when it comes to Trey and Brock, personally, I still think Trey's the guy that I at least want to see that through. You trade 3 first-round picks for the guy. He has these tools. And we were kind of talking about it in a space last night. Rich Madrid was in there, and I totally agree with him. It's like, with Brock, he did a pretty good job, but how big of a ceiling does he really have? I think his floor is pretty good, but down the road for the franchise quarterback, I don't know if that's what Brock Purdy's going to be. I think Trey, even though we haven't seen much of him, I think the tools he has, the athleticism, the arm strength, the accuracy downfield, kind of a dual threat. He's not like a Justin Fields or Jalen Hurts runner, but he can still run the ball. I think that Trey's a dude that they just got to commit to and just show that they believe in him and give him that trust to just take them as far as he can. And how do you see the competition playing out? I'm assuming there's going to be some competition depends what Brock's health is like in camp, but throughout the season, obviously, if Trey has his downs, if Trey like has a few starts that go wrong, that everyone's going to be kind of calling for Brock Purdy, the guy who won games last year. So how do you see that competition playing out?
Well, I mean, I think we have to let's just go off everything off best case scenario, which is, it's funny. A week ago, the surgery was scheduled for the 22nd of February. Here we are 1 week later, and it's March 1st. So it is early March, and they talked about reevaluated in early March. It sounds like that will happen towards the end of this week, and that surgery could be as early as early next week. So let's say that the surgery is Monday or Tuesday, March 6th or March 7th. That would put us out at September 6th or 7th with a 6-month time frame for his best case scenario return to play, which is that repair and internal brace type option. It would mean that he would be back throwing probably around 3 or 4 months, and then would be ready to play around 5 or 6 months, probably, maybe 7 months. So that's going to give Trey Lance a huge leg up. He's going to have all of OTAs, most of preseason, all to himself, or whoever else we sign. And I think who we sign will have a big there will be a big impact on who we sign based on which of these options are. Because I mentioned there's the 6 months option. There's obviously the hybrid option where they introduce, where it's a partial repair, partial replacement, 9-month recovery, and then the full replacement, replacement, Tommy John, 12 plus months. So I think you're going to look at all kinds of different options. And you said Jimmy's gone and we shouldn't talk on, but I do want to just say, like, I can see if it's that full Tommy John, his name might, and nobody else bites on him, that he might come back in. But let's just hope that doesn't happen with Jimmy. I don't want him back. You don't want him back. Most fans don't want Jimmy back. I said before Purdy got injured that I thought that Lance would end up being QB1 of this team at some point in the future, regardless, even if Purdy stayed healthy, because he does have that higher ceiling. He's taller. He's got the bigger arm. I think it's more likely that Lance can do the things that Purdy's good at, which is accuracy, decision-making, pocket presence. Those are the big places where he has a leg up on Lance. I think it's more likely than Purdy learning to be 6'4" and have a cannon of an arm. Not that you have to have that to be a good or great quarterback, but it definitely helps. I think Purdy, I think he's close to his ceiling. I think he can get better timing with our targets. And that's why I really wanted to see him healthy this offseason, was to establish that timing with Ayuk and Debo and Kittle and CMC, because you could argue that if he had better timing with Ayuk, that he would have thrown him open in the NFC Championship game before Hassan Reddick got to him. Or the other thing was that they said if he stepped up, which is another thing he might learn to do through stepped up in the pocket instead of bailing backwards, which is another thing he might learn with experience. So as it stands, I mean, it seems like Lance is going to get a chance to start. I'm really excited about that because I want the best two quarterbacks we can have this season. I like them both. I'm not like, because I'm a Lance guy, it doesn't mean I'm not a Purdy guy. I love what he did for us, 6-0 in the regular season, 2-0 playoffs. He never lost a game that he finished. So there's a ton to like about the kid. And there's no guarantee that Lance will ever hit his ceiling, even if he stays healthy. And obviously Lance's health has to be a little bit of a concern at this point. So I'm excited to have those two. But I think when we talk about QB3, a lot depends on the surgery next week, assuming, knock on wood, let's hope it's early next week, as soon as possible. And let's hope it's the recovery as soon as possible. The one thing I'll say about that too is just, I don't want to rush Purdy back. If staying out longer, having a longer time frame on his recovery helps him to have more accuracy or more arm strength or maybe more longevity of that elbow long term, then I hope he puts in the time on the front end and doesn't try to rush it back just to get back in play sooner and jeopardize his long term availability.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And Brosco came in here to say, go Lakers and let's go Jimmy Garoppolo. Maybe you guys can sign Jimmy G, and maybe it'll actually help you guys win some games. But anyways, I'm not going to talk about that irrelevant franchise right now. No, with the quarterback situation, I think that with Trey Lance, and I was kind of telling you this backstage before we went on, I think it really is about the health. John Lynch has been kind of, I don't know if harsh is the right word for it, but I remember before when he was basically saying, Trey needs to prove that he can stay healthy. It was just weird to me because it was like Brock Purdy also had 2 injuries this year. But I also get it because Trey had those injuries in his rookie year too. And then this year, obviously, the big injury in week 2. So I think that's really the biggest concern for me. I think that with Trey, he really just needs to play and just get out there. Because you remember what Fred Warner said when he was asked about Trey Lance a while ago was he makes us better, is what he said. And I think, we were talking about it last night too in that space when people were talking about the way camp was covered. Trey was going up against what ended up being the best defense in the NFL. There were days Trent Williams wasn't practicing. There were days Mike McGlinchey wasn't practicing. And say what you want about Mike McGlinchey, but compared to Colton McKivitz or like Jalen Moore or whoever else sliding out to right tackle, I'd much rather have McGlinchey. And Brock Purdy didn't look great in camp, is what pretty much the consensus was, but he ended up winning the backup job. I like both QBs, just like you. For me, I see this team that's been able to be in position to win games with mediocre quarterback play. I don't know how long you can sustain that with the fact that you've been able to put all this talent around the quarterback, and now you're going to have to pay Nick Bosa. Now you're paying Debo. You're going to have to make a decision on Ayuk. I don't even think you're going to be able to pick up Kinlaw's option because he just hasn't produced enough, and I just don't see a point in doing that. They're having to restructure all these deals. How much longer are you going to be able to get away with having mediocre to above average quarterback play and trying to win a Super Bowl? At some point, you're going to need someone with the tools that can potentially develop into a top 10 quarterback. I'm not saying Trey Lance will be, but he has the physical tools and the physical traits that you want to find in somebody that you hope could end up being a top 10 QB. So that's why they just got to get this development going now. I mean, we're going to be entering year 3, just trying to see what we finally have in Trey, just to really start seeing it really. And if you look at Trey's 4 starts, I mean, Kittle wasn't there for 3 of those 4 starts. He didn't have Christian McCaffrey. Like, people will talk about Trey's monsoon game and try to pin that loss on him. Did he play great? He didn't play great, but the offense didn't really play great for weeks. I mean, the Seahawks defense was just not good, and they were able to run all over them. But how did they do against Denver with Jimmy G? And the offense was it was the issue, actually. The offense was what the problem was. It was when they got Christian McCaffrey that things started to turn around. Jimmy G didn't throw a single interception with Christian McCaffrey on the field. Brock Purdy came in there when CMC was already integrated into the offense, and they didn't lose a single game since he became the starter, McCaffrey. So now we get to see potentially a full season with Trey Lance and Christian McCaffrey. And hopefully Kittle's actually available. And people might try to downplay Kittle's absence because he wasn't used as a pass catcher all that much. But look at what happened when Brock Purdy stepped in, because that was kind of a discussion all year long was, is George Kittle getting separation? Is he washed, or is Jimmy just not seeing him? And I think don't think Jimmy was seeing him, because when Brock Purdy came in, he had an amazing back end of the season. It was a huge part of the offense. Now, if you get Trey Lance and George Kittle, that similar type of connection, and obviously we know he has a really good chemistry with Brandon Ayuk, and you get Christian McCaffrey integrated. And I'm not a huge fan of like QB powers, but the zone read options with Trey Lance and Christian McCaffrey is probably going to be really deadly. And that might give you more options in ways you can use Deebo Samuel too. So I really do just want to see a season where Trey Lance just gets a legitimate chance. And I think he will. I think he'll end up securing the job all year. But I'm really comfortable with Brock Purdy. For whatever reason, we have to go back to him. I'm not going to just sit here and act like I don't like Purdy. I do like him. It's just I would like to see us maximize that original plan, which was we're going to trade these picks and we're going to get someone who can win us games. People will say Jimmy G won you football games or led you to the Super Bowl. He didn't do that. He played a part. And even this year, I'll say he played really well this year compared to, the year before. But at the end of the day, if he was playing in that game in Philly and he was fully healthy, we're not going to win that game. He's just not that kind of quarterback. So I think Trey can be that. So I'd like to see that through. And honestly, Kyle and John Lynch pretty much put their reputations on Trey Lance. So I don't know if that makes them a little bit afraid. I have no idea. But Kevin, valid point. The Lakers do suck. That is why they are a 12 seed. But that's my thoughts on the quarterbacks. But we can kind of talk about what we were talking about last night with that Matt Barrows article, and the wording of it. I did not read the full thing, so I'm just going to say that up front. I am never paying for The Athletic. That's just me. So with the whole 80th percentile thing, and then Marco Martinez obviously did an interview, and could have probably got all the same information that Matt Barrows did in 1 hour of just an interview that is literally on YouTube. So you guys should go check out Marco. And that guy basically said, well, Trey tested a lot closer to Brock Purdy in the percentile, and it wasn't really phrased right in the article, that it kind of made it seem like it was farther away than it really was. And it's just weird because I think media has treated Brock Purdy and Trey Lance, like this discussion ever since Brock Purdy came into the picture, really weird. Like you see how much he's embraced and praised the second he comes in, whereas Trey Lance, the thought of him getting the reins is like, we need to push back on this through media. And it's kind of weird. Like with the arm fatigue thing, I get it. It was a real thing. And people were getting really sensitive on Twitter about like, it's real, like admit that it was real. It was real, but it was so out of context. You're saying he has arm fatigue. You're not saying he has arm fatigue because he's throwing all the time. If I run 2 miles, I'm going to have leg fatigue. I'm going to be tired. Like it's just such a non-story, but people try to push these non-stories or bend the truth or try to word the truth in certain ways to push their own narratives. And we were kind of talking about it last night. Like it's not really journalism, but people take these reports and they eat it up. And I don't understand if it's because people want to prop up Brock Purdy, if they want to bring Trey Lance down, if it's a combination of both. It's just strange to me, and it's been going on for a while. So this recent article was the most recent one. What are your thoughts on that whole situation?
I mean, I think there's twofold thing. The more I think about it, and just from listening to you talk about it, Chris, I mean, one is some of these reporters are kind of what we would call company guys, right? They represent the 49ers, and they kind of do what the 49ers want. I definitely think David Lombardi is that way. I definitely think Mike Silver is that way. Matt Barrows less so. I mean, it was interesting. Grant was on that space last night, and Grant was kind of saying this doesn't seem like Matt Barrows to me. But it is interesting that he sort of made the implication that Lance was closer to the 80th percentile than he was to Purdy, and then the guy from the test, the administrator of the test was saying no, Lance is closer to Purdy than he is to the 80th percentile. They didn't give us apparently release any of the numbers for anybody. Because they didn't have permission to do that. But it did sound like it was misrepresented slightly. And I think maybe part of it is, the almighty clicks, right? I think people know that most of the fan base likes Trey Lance. And so if you say something bad about Trey Lance, we're going to come out like an angry swarm of hornets and come after you and click, 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 click. And you get your engagement and you get your, ultimately that equals money, whether it's your advertisement or what have you. And kind of the same thing if you say something good about Jimmy G, when most of the people now are kind of over him, and the same thing, you get the click, 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 engagement. So that could be part of it too. I haven't read the article myself, and I do need to catch Marco's video. But when you got people like Marco and Jesse Naylor and David Lighty, all kind of in lockstep on this. I was who I saw first. I saw David Lighty's post, his tweet on it, and I didn't know what the heck he was talking about because it was kind of vague. And then, started to see more and more stuff. And then that space happened last night. That was really eye-opening. It's interesting. I definitely want to check out Marco's show and see what the gentleman, I think it's called S2 is the name of the cognitive test, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So I want to see what the guy from S2 has to say. But it doesn't surprise me that, it's funny that you can use the same words that somebody used, but maybe not use all of them and sort of obscure the truth by doing that. I wouldn't call it lying, but I would also not call it not telling the whole truth either. So it's not like they put different words in there, but, just you leave out a few words, all of a sudden it means a different thing to most people reading it. It gives you a different impression of what's being said.
Yeah, it's lack of context. That's what's been so weird. There's certain people, I don't even need to name them, and you probably know some who tend to leave out context a lot of times, especially when talking about Trey Lance. I don't even need to name them. But I remember like one tweet specifically, and I won't say who it was from. And this was during training camp. Remember training camp, how obsessed everyone was with completion percentage in camp.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and like literally every Trey Lance throw would be live tweeted. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to say everyone did a bad, like there are people who did a really good job covering camp. Rohan did a really good job. Grant did a really good job. Marco did a really good job. Like there's lots of people did a really good job covering that time, but there are some tweets, some people covering it. I literally saw one that just said Trey Lance throws an incomplete pass to Brandon Ayuk or something like that, or throws a pass to Brandon Ayuk. Like I didn't know anything about that throw. And it's just weird because it like they're trying to use this stuff to try to just stir up conversation, like you said, kind of get clicks and get engagement going. And it's just, I don't know. It's kind of strange behavior in a way. I feel like there's different ways to go about it, especially with this case with The Athletic. I guess this is a little different because if you're supposed to be a journalist and if you're just pushing narratives, that's not journalism. And we were kind of talking about it last night, how it kind of feels like at The Athletic, they all kind of have the same stance and they kind of all have the same takes. It's kind of like a group think type of thing. And some people might say like, well, maybe it's not on Barrows, maybe it's on the editor. I've been managing editor at Stadium Rant too. I've edited tons of articles. If you see narrative pushing and you push it out, and like you're aware of that too as the editorial, it doesn't mean it's just Matt Barrows. It's just the whole Athletic in general. And that's kind of what I think David was kind of talking about in his tweet. And that's why he was saying like, man, he can't wait for his subscription to end. And that's why I wouldn't pay for it either. And that's another good point too, is when you're pushing these narratives and you're trying to leave out certain things to try to get a certain reaction, you're also trying to sell subscriptions, because now we're talking about this right now, right? We're talking about this article from The Athletic. Someone might be like, let me go pay a little bit so I can just go read that, you know? Just trying to put the word out there and just trying to get engagement that way so you can sell the subscription. So it kind of comes off as not even genuine to me. That's why I don't take The Athletic seriously, in all honesty. So it can just be kind of weird, but I really do just want to see the two just play, assuming up Brock Purdy is playing camp, play throughout the season, and whoever really is the best, going to put us in the best position to win. I'll trust Kyle Shanahan to evaluate that himself. I'm not really going to listen to John Lynch. I'm not really going to be listening to, other analysts. Like what Kyle decides, I'm going to trust him. And I'm pretty sure, even though we kind of get the sense a lot of times that the team doesn't fully believe in Trey, I think Kyle really still believes in Trey a lot. And I think he really just does want to see him get that opportunity. Now, is he going to hand him anything? No. But I think he believes that Trey's his guy and that he will earn that job regardless. And I think that's why we don't see him kind of go out of his way to just back Trey in every situation he can. Like he did say that it was Trey's team last year, but it's not like he comes in right now and says, Trey's our starter, Trey's our guy. There's no need to do that. Because honestly, if we all believe that Trey's the guy that we hope he is, he'll go win this job regardless, even if Brock Purdy was fully healthy.
No doubt about it. And you brought some good points there. One was completion percentage in camp. And, camp is like the opposite of the place where you want to work on completion percentage. I mean, it's nice if it happens, but that's not the goal. The goal of camp is to work on your weaknesses. And so automatically that should lower your completion percentage. You mentioned some other things that should lower your completion percentage. Trent Williams being out, Mike McGlinchey being out. What about Debo holding in until August, right? Debo didn't practice at all. Then Debo comes back and Kittle pulls his groin. And then you mentioned that Lance hasn't played with CMC in a regular season game. Well, obviously he didn't play with Lance. CMC didn't play in the offseason in camp either. So all those are factors that lower that completion percentage, things I don't worry about. And then one other thing about that S2 cognition test, I think you just mentioned that a lot of it, the longer you've played, the better you're going to score on that test. Well, Purdy hasn't played much longer in the NFL, but he actually has now, but probably not when he took that test. But he definitely played 48 games in college compared to Lance's 17. And so that could be a reason for him to score higher, even if, all things equal, they would have scored the same, or Lance might have actually scored higher with more experience. So that's an important thing to keep in mind too, with the fact that Lance definitely, one thing we can say for sure is Lance scored lower. Whether it was what Barrow said, closer to 80% than Purdy, or what the administrator of the test said, closer to Purdy than 80%. It was lower, but there are reasons for that. And I think experience is a big one.
Yeah. Yeah, and listen, it was like that's why people had an issue with it because it was like, are you trying to make Trey Lance seem dumb? Because it was pretty known that he was one of the smarter quarterbacks in the entire draft class. And listen, Brock Purdy tested really high. No team thought he was worth drafting. Like, how much does that test really matter? So it's like trying to word it in that way. It's just weird. It's just weird. But we can kind of keep moving on now. Let's still stay on quarterbacks. But obviously, since Brock Purdy's coming off the UCL and he's going to have that surgery, Niners are going to need a veteran backup. And I kind of wrote about this too. Just from the fact that we've had quarterback injury issues. You know, we literally ran out of quarterbacks last year. I've never seen a situation like that. I don't think it'll happen again, but the quarterback room, I don't think is going to be as deep week one as it was this past year. We had a pretty good quarterback room this past year, which saved us, but now it's Trey Lance and no one else. So who do you think the Niners should go after as a backup quarterback who would end up probably being a third string behind Purdy when Purdy does return?
Yeah, so there's sort of the two options, right? There's like the best case scenario after the surgery where we think Purdy will be back maybe week 1, but probably more likely he'll go on PUP and be back week 4 or something like that, week 5. In that scenario, I think you go a little more cheap and cheerful, if you will. Somebody who's not quite as established and also conversely or appropriately not quite as expensive. One idea I like for that best case scenario that is Jarrett Stidham, who kind of tore us apart as a Raiders quarterback. He's inexperienced game wise, but he's got a lot of experience, kind of like Jimmy G was with the Patriots. Several years with the Patriots as a backup quarterback, learning how to be a pro. So I think despite his lack of game experience, I feel like he's got pretty good leadership experience. He didn't play well against the Chiefs in Arrowhead, but that's a lot different than playing at Allegiant Stadium in Vegas against us. But we have a great defense. He did well against us. That's one I like. If it's like Purdy's out and like not going to play this season, I like somebody like Jacoby Brissett and really shell out some money for somebody like him. But there's so many options in between. There's Minshew, there's Dalton, there's Cooper Rush. I even bring up Baker Mayfield. I mean, I know it'd be crazy to see him in the same locker room as Nick Bosa, but I mean, I felt like the Rams really kind of blocked us last season when they signed him. He hit the waiver wire. They were way ahead of us. They signed him. He had at least one really good game for them. I remember. I think it was against Denver when they just absolutely destroyed Denver. I couldn't help thinking during the NFC Championship game, like, wouldn't you rather have Baker coming in than Josh Johnson? Jameis Winston, Kevin, that's another good name. Interesting name. He had a good 2021 until he tore his ACL. He played well with Sean Payton's offense, and I think Kyle could craft something for him. Mariota just got cut. He's been a name that's been mentioned a lot, especially it would be nice if it is Lance all off season, running the offense. And, when he went down, it was a double whammy. I mean, first, our QB1 got injured, but the second whammy with Lance getting injured week 2 against the Seahawks was that we had to scrap the whole offense. We had been practicing all summer to put Jimmy G in. So as much as we could have a more mobile backup, like a Mariota, like a Tyler Huntley, who else? Yeah, those are some of the ones that come to mind. Tyler Huntley might be tough because he made the Pro Bowl, even though I don't think he deserved to. It still might affect his price. There's probably more that I'm missing, but those are some of the ones off the top of my head. So I sort of got the kind of two poles, though. Stidham is like a real cheap option. And the reason I like Stidham is, we don't know that he can do it, which is a little scary. If Purdy's out for the season, that's probably not a good option. But we also don't know that he can't do it, and so it makes him a kind of a high ceiling for a low price guy, maybe. Yeah,
and for mine, I was kind of looking. I was trying to think of cost, but also, I'm not going to say so. Taylor Heineke for me, for instance, would be an amazing one, but I think he's going to be too expensive. I think
up
that
there, he'll be up there with Brissett, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think he might be right the next one after Brissett.
Yeah, and Brissett would be a really good backup too. I kind of wrote about that, and if it's at the right price, obviously. But I mean, the dude threw for like 2,600 yards, and I think it was just 11 games, and he threw 6 interceptions, 12 touchdowns. I honestly am really open to Andy Dalton. The more I've thought about it, just because what was so abnormal about last year was Brock Purdy, when he came in, he's a rookie and a 7th-round rookie, and it was an upgrade from the veteran backup that we had going in there. That's really rare that you have a situation like that. I mean, it's so rare. Literally, it's never happened before with a Mr. Irrelevant. But with Trey Lance being the one QB on the roster right now, I would really like a very seasoned veteran behind him, just in case, because I don't think Purdy's going to be ready to go the first portion of the season. And if Trey Lance tweaks an ankle, or if he has some minor injury and has to miss a game or two, Andy Dalton's had a lot of starts in his career, like a lot of starts. And last year he completed like 67% of his passes. He threw for almost 3,000 yards. He had 18 touchdowns. That was in 14 starts. So if you put him with Debo and Ayuk and Kittle, and you have Trent Williams as his left tackle, and you obviously have Christian McCaffrey that he can lean on a lot, and Kyle Shanahan scheming up the plays and a good defense to back him up, I'm really comfortable, having to go a few games with Andy Dalton. And I don't know how expensive he will be, but I think that he's at that point where he's just going to bounce around as a backup for however much longer he plays. I think he's like 35, probably somewhere around there. He's just going to bounce around as a backup, and I would love to take him in just as a second string until Brock Purdy comes back, because I don't think we really need to break. I don't want the quarterback position to be like the top need and top priority of free agency. There's definitely other needs. We definitely don't need to get the best backup available. We just need to get someone who we think could fill in if they had to for a few games. Don't really want to bank on like if Trey Lance didn't work out, or if he got hurt and he was out for like 8 weeks, that this quarterback can come in and win, like go 6-2. That's not normal. Usually you don't win with your backup quarterbacks. Like what happened last year is so not normal that we can't be expecting that again if the situation comes along where Trey Lance isn't available to play if he gets hurt. So just get somebody serviceable. And really, they're just buying time until Brock Purdy does come back. And I just hope, like we were talking about earlier, I hope Brock Purdy isn't rushed back. I hope that he gets his full recovery, because that injury is weird. I've never seen a UCL injury like that where it came from your arm getting hit. I know we see it in pitchers a lot, but getting your arm hit like that and just completely tearing, that's really weird.
What's one, just to cut you off, sorry, on that subject, Mullins in Dallas was very similar, where DeMarcus Lawrence came around, McGlinchey whiffed his block, and he hit him in a very similar fashion, and Mullins ended up with the repair, so let's hope Brock gets the repair too. And sorry to cut you off, Chris, I apologize.
No,
I got some other things to talk about, but that one I thought was important to bring up right then.
Yeah, for sure. Another quarterback people have thrown out there, it would be interesting. It would really just be dependent on how much it would cost. Have you thought about Sam Darnold?
That was one I was gonna bring up. There's 3 that I've been thinking about besides that we've missed here. But go ahead about Sam, because he's intriguing for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Sam, like, he's still a veteran, but he's not really old. And obviously, he was someone talented enough to be picked in the first round, high in the first round. He has good arm talent. Like, I've seen him make really difficult throws. Now, is he a great quarterback? Is he a starter? Not really. But he could be a really good backup. And
kind of mobile.
And he's kind of mobile, and he can make throws at different angles. I don't know how much he would cost, but if he is at the right price, Sam Darnold might be my number one option because of that for a backup.
Well, one problem with Sam Darnold, Chris, that you're forgetting clearly, is he went to USC, and Roscoe would be so excited. So we can't have that.
That's true. That is true.
So forget Sam Darnold. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, actually, you're right. No, scrap that. Forget I said that.
And I saw that speaking of Roscoe's Mister, I had a tweet I thought he might see. Maybe he didn't. He just ignored it. But it looked like the Falcons right now are rolling with Kavitha Pritchard as their quarterback at the moment, since they cut Marcus Mariota. And I just remember that name from I'll be honest, I was actually rooting for USC. My wife went to USC, and so I was rooting for them back in, it was like the Booty and Bush era, back when they lost to Texas in the Natty to Vince Young, had those couple rushing touchdowns that killed him. But there was it might have been the next year, because I think that was Leinart, and then I think the next year it was Booty, and they were playing Stanford, and Stanford was terrible. I think it was Harbaugh was the coach at Stanford, and the QB was Kavitha Pritchard, and it was like one of the biggest upsets ever. I think it was like a 45-point spread or something crazy like that, and Stanford won. So I was calling Kavitha Pritchard the SC killer. But maybe if Chris didn't see that, maybe he's hearing it now.
I think you gave him PTSD when you said Vince Young. I think
yes, and me too. I hated it. I was rooting for SC. Not only did my wife go there, but one of my coworkers at the time, his brother was the fullback there. For Lendale White and Reggie Bush were Thunder and Lightning, and the fullback, his name was David Kurtman. It just came to me. And my coworker who worked with my wife and I, basically, we were all rooting for SC and sad when Vince Young won. And then Vince Young never really did much in the NFL, poor guy. So
yeah.
Oh well, what do you?
Yeah, Roscoe, guy who didn't do much in the NFL, just crush your guys' season. You know what? I'm gonna get a big portrait, Roscoe. I might pay you to make me a portrait of Vince Young, so I can just stick it on the back wall there, so you can see it every time you tune in the show. I don't even like Texas. I do not care for them, but I might do it just to be petty. But
no, and I like SC. I'm more of a Stanford guy. I grew up. My dad went to Stanford, so I grew up watching SC kick the snot out of them every weekend when we went down there to watch. But anyway, yeah,
I loved watching Andrew Luck at Stanford when he was there. I loved watching Stanford when he was there for sure.
Yeah, and I got to watch John Elway too. But honestly, as good as Elway was, Stanford was never good during that time frame. Last time they were good before Harbaugh was like before my time. I mean, I was alive, but I wasn't watching football. Was with Plunkett when they won the Rose Bowl in like 70 or 71. Really early.
I went to a bowl game when I think it was Ty Montgomery's last season. I went to a bowl game and I met Jim Plunkett. It was at Levi's, and we were like in the club section. He's just walking around there. I met Jim Plunkett at that one. I forgot. I think that was like 2014, 2015, somewhere around there. But yeah, anyways, Roscoe, I don't care. USC's trash. You guys lost that game. Anyways, let's go back.
Plunkett was the quarterback for the Niners when I first started being a Niner fan in '76.
Yeah,
and didn't do very well. Then we got to Berg and then Montana. Mm-hmm. And right before we won our first Super Bowl, Plunkett won a Super Bowl for the Raiders the year before in 1980. So
yep, exactly. Now, to kind of talk about free agency.
Wait, two other names real quick. QBs.
Go ahead.
Matt Ryan. No Matt Ryan,
no,
please.
I'm good.
And I'm blanking on the other one now that I was thinking of. Well, I guess Brady kind of has to come up at some point in the conversation. I don't believe it'll happen, but
it'll never happen.
The way I could see it happening, just like kind of weird way, would be like, okay, so he punted on his broadcasting for this season to like patch it up with the family. And he goes back to Giselle and she's like, sorry, bud, the ship sailed. Then I could see him, maybe, be like, well, I might as well play. No network, no Giselle. Might as well do something with my time this season. That's the only way I could see it playing out. But there was one more, and I am that I wasn't wild about anyway, because I kind of like Sam. I didn't want Matt Ryan. And if I think of it, I'll circle.
All right, sure. Yeah, because we're going to talk about free agency anyways. So who do you think are the Niners' biggest targets, or who do you think they should be? And also kind of combining that, of the free agents that the Niners have, who are the top ones that you'd want us to bring back?
Well, when all this talk about restructuring came up in these tweets, I did a poll, and it seemed like right tackle was tops on people's minds. Center was a big one, and defensive tackle. So, I mean, maybe McGlinchey, maybe McGarry, maybe draft a right tackle.
Yeah, and they might be sliding Burford out there. I don't know. They might have an idea to, maybe that's why they drafted Burford. Maybe it was to, let him play at guard, but let him move over to right tackle. I'm not sure. Right tackle to me is one of the biggest needs. You already had quarterback injury issues. No, it's not, because your guys are standing in the pocket and guys are getting sacked, but you're not going to help that issue if you have, nothing at right tackle. If you have Colton McKivitz out there, you're going to be in trouble, especially if Trent Williams, like, he missed some games this year. If he tweaks an ankle and goes down for a few weeks and McGlinchey's not part of the picture anymore, I'm going to be pretty worried about the outside. So right tackle for me, Mike McGlinchey, I hope we can get him back. I really don't know if it's going to happen, though, just because the price tag he's going to come with. But in all honesty, what kind of worries me about that is I don't know if there's any obvious upgrade that's available in free agency that the Niners could afford. So it looks like McGlinchey's their best bet at right tackle unless someone else steps up, or if they draft some. I think they're going to have to draft tackles regardless, because also Trent Williams is getting a little older, and I don't really have any confidence in the backup tackles right now. So I think you're going to need to draft someone so they can start to develop and, grow into that role in the next few years. I think that another thing too, I really want Mosley back. I don't know what he's going to cost. I know his market value on Spot Rack is like 16.6 million, I think, like that. I don't think he's going to command that coming off a torn ACL, though. So when people are tweeting that, I mean, if he does, good for him.
I had someone in a show say 2 years, 16 mil, and that I could kind of see 8 mil a year, for 2 years.
I could see him maybe signing like a very short deal to kind of bet on himself. That may not be as expensive as he was hoping, to just prove I can finish a season healthy. I'm going to play at a high level and then cash on a contract next year. Some players do that where they'll bank on themselves. And I could see him maybe doing that. It's just for him, like, maybe you don't get the offers you're wanting. You're really going to sign like a 4-year deal on an offer you were hoping to get way better than? Like, if, like, let's say his market value truly was 16 million, but it is kind of the rate you're talking about, like more like 8 million a year. So you're going to sign a 4-year deal like that. You're going to take 1 year at a pay raise and see if you can turn that into a big contract. My thing with Mosley, though, is Lenore did pretty good. He was actually pretty decent. I know people want to say he was like the hole on the defense. I don't think he was the hole. I just think the defense was so good, it was very hard to find one spot that wasn't top tier. Lenore wasn't really top tier, but he did a good job. And I wouldn't mind if we go into next season, he's the other starting corner outside. But if you have Mosley and Travarius Ward at their age, you're probably going to get the best years of their careers, locking down both sides. You have Hufanga, who's ascended from the safety position. Tashawn Gibson probably wouldn't be expensive to bring back for another year also. And then obviously you have the best linebacking core in the NFL, and you have that front line, which needs to be shored up a little bit. I think you need another edge presence. I think you need someone else on the inside, but to shore up those corners, that'd make me feel really comfortable about next season, and knowing that Lenore is an option too, and he can step into the nickel spot if he develops or not. Jimmy Ward, I know obviously people want to bring him back, but what's that price tag going to look like? And honestly, are you going to re-sign somebody who's going to be 33 soon, or are you going to go with Mosley, who's in his mid-20s? I think honestly they might choose Mosley, but the interesting thing about Jimmy Ward is his versatility. You can play him at safety, you can play him at nickel, and he was a top 100 player as a safety. And it's just, I love Jimmy Ward, and I love his attitude that he brings to the defense also. It's just, these are going to be the decisions that are going to have to be made the next few years as the cap starts to get a little tighter for the Niners, because like we were talking about earlier, that Bosa contract is coming, and it's going to be the highest. He's going to be the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL when he signs that contract. So those are like my top guys I'd love to bring back. I know some people are talking about like Daron Payne, but he's getting the franchise tag, so that would cost you picks. I know some people have talked about like Yannick Ngakoue, which I think would be a really good pickup. Some people have talked about CJ Gardner-Johnson. I don't know if there's other guys like that you're kind of looking at outside in free agency, some veterans on defense. Offense, I think we're mostly fine. It's just, I would really like to see that right tackle spot shored up.
Yeah, I mean, on offense, I've wanted a tight end since 2020 draft for sure. One who can block and catch. And then one that's kind of sneaky is wide receiver, because we seem so set at 1, 2, 3. But if you look at the fact that, Juwan Jennings is on a 1-year deal, Ayuk coming up on that 5th-year option, which I'm sure we'll pick up. But it's hard to imagine signing Ayuk and Jennings both long term. And then, there's even talk about maybe trading Debo next year after the 2023 season, maybe next June, I guess. So we might need some wide receivers. It doesn't have to be a draft, but just acquire some wide receivers might make some sense too. One I saw that I like was Bobby Trees, better known as Robert Woods, who was a former Ram receiver. The Titans just cut him along with Taylor Lewan. He blocks. He catches. He's very versatile, which Kyle loves that versatility, that positionless football. But another important thing about Robert Woods is he was kind of like looked at like Kittle in the Rams locker room. He was really well liked and kind of a captain and one of the leaders of the team. So that's one as a free agent that's out there. Another free agent that I saw that I liked, another ex-Ram, oddly enough, was John Johnson, was cut by the Browns. I know he was really good in the Rams, and I think good for the first year on the Browns, but maybe slipped a little this last year. So might be a little risky, might be more of a rehabilitation project. I'm not sure. I think someone said he missed like 17 tackles or something. But sometimes those are subjective too. I know that, sometimes it's not your responsibility or you're just close by and they pin you with it. So I don't know that that's, I didn't watch enough to know. I just know he used to be good, and I know we need safeties. So that was an interesting name that would probably be less expensive than, say, a Jordan Poyer from the Bills, who I think will be the second highest paid, or blanking on the guy's name from the Bengals, who's really good, their safety, who dropped the interception against us when we were there in Cincy.
Jesse
Bates, who they franchise tagged last year.
Yeah.
So I think Jesse will set the market, and I think Jordan Poyer will be just a tick below him, but John Johnson might be quite a bit lower, and that might be someone we might think of.
Yeah, and a center is important too, Kevin. I know that I think Zakel just kind of penciled in as someone they want to be the center. So I guess we're gonna have to see how that pans out. Hopefully, he has like that Aaron Banks type sophomore season. So that'll be interesting to kind of monitor, because it's not just McGlinchey that's free agent. Brunskill's a free agent. Brendel's a free agent. So we got some holes to fill on the O line for sure. No Border Sports brought up a point I wanted to talk about when you're talking about wide receivers. Danny Gray, and I actually wrote about this. I wrote an article about Niners next year that I think have to step up, who might be kind of flying under the radar right now. Danny Gray was a Trey Lance pick. So as soon as he kind of went down, we kind of saw Danny Gray, I think, be mostly used as a decoy or a clear out. And I think now in his second season, having just worked through practice and just, being on the team for a full year, now he's going to be able to hopefully have Trey all next year. I think we'll see Danny Gray used more. And obviously we have Debo, Ayuk, and Juwan Jennings. I think Danny Gray can kind of get implemented in that offense a little bit and kind of unlock that deep ball that Trey Lance has too. So that to me is an underrated guy who could step up and have a really good second season. I think that when it comes to wide receiver, I would love Robert Woods. Imagine Debo, Ayuk with Robert Woods and George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey. I would for sure take that. But I feel like at this point in the NFL, you end up drafting a receiver every year regardless, because of all the great receivers that are coming out of college the last handful of years. And I think they'll probably draft another one. I don't know if they'll go out and sign one. If they do, I feel like the receivers they're going to end up signing are going to be very cheap camp bodies. Kind of like how this past year we had some guys that were really just camp bodies that didn't really do much. I feel like that's who their free agency signings are going to be at that position. But tight end, I totally agree. I would love another tight end, that 2 tight end set that they tried to have with Jordan Reed and George Kittle. That whole year, everyone was hurt, and Jordan Reed got hurt too. In an ideal situation for me, I would really love to find a way to just get Dalton Kincaid from Utah, the tight end. I love Kincaid. I think he's a really good tight end. Now, is it realistic? Probably not. But that to me would also be someone who is very young while Kittle starts to get older, because these draft picks, and we kind of talk about this right now for a couple minutes, I think they're going to use most of these picks. Now, they will probably trade some of these picks to move around, but I think they're going to start using more of their picks the next few years, because the veterans in their core, they're going to keep getting older, and either they're going to go all in and try to get the pieces that will for sure put them over the hump. But honestly, I feel like it's not going to matter unless you have the right quarterback. And I think that's why they're just going to have to invest in Trey, but also understand, some of these guys, they're going to be hitting that ceiling pretty soon, and they're not going to get better. They're going to start to regress at some point in a few years. So I think you're going to have to start using these picks to make sure that you have the future secured and you have your youth and you have guys that you can develop the next handful of years on cheap contracts. So I think they're going to end up drafting receivers. I hope they draft another tight end and definitely need to draft some offensive linemen for sure. Because like Kevin was saying, you need to pair guys with Trey Lance for the future. Or maybe if it's Brock Purdy, same thing. You need to get an offensive line that's going to be paired with these guys down the road, not just next year or 2 years from now, but like 5-6 years. Oh, you're muted still.
Thanks. Sorry, I got some blower action going on here, so I'm just trying to spare you guys from that. One of the pitfalls of Wednesday morning shows here by my house. So, yeah, I think young wide receivers does kind of make sense. So we'll see if it's just camp buys that makes sense too. I could totally see that. And Danny Gray, I sure hope he shows up. I mean, otherwise we're going to start talking about third round wide receiver busts as well as third round running back busts, right? Because yeah, I mean, I was a big fan of him. I had all the nicknames ready to go, and now they're on the shelf waiting for him to actually prove what he can do. Someone was mentioning, drafting cornerbacks. Ambry Thomas hasn't really worked out. I agree with that. I've kind of lost faith in Ambry Thomas. Now I'm just kind of hoping for Quantrez Knight maybe to show up since he's got that versatility
and
play safety.
Samuel Womack.
And yeah, Samuel Womack.
Another one too. So we got to see how that goes. And I know defensive tackle is mentioned also, definitely a need. I think that's one that they might try to address in free agency. But one that people forget, Kalia Davis was drafted. Did come off that ACL, but he's supposed to be a beast. So let's see how he does in camp and how he does this year. I think he's going to have a bigger role. I think there's a reason they wanted to take him even though he's coming off that injury. So they're willing to be patient with him and they see something. So I trust Chris Kacerek to get the best out of everybody on that defensive line. And yeah, the corner position, that's another reason why I say I'd love to keep Mosley around. If you keep Mosley around, your two outside corners are pretty much set, and you can let Lenore and Womack develop at least for a few more years and see what you want to do there. As much as I'd love to keep Jimmy Ward, I just feel like he's going to be the more expensive one, and he is the older option too, and sucks. And he's going to probably be a really good player for another team. I just, based on the way it sounds, like when he would talk to media and what he was saying on his Instagram Live, it kind of sounds like the writing's on the wall that they're probably not going to be able to pay to bring him back. So we're just getting that time where these players that have been on our course starting to get more expensive, which is why you got to do what you can to capitalize off your quarterback on a rookie deal. So these next few years are going to be really important. But honestly, Ted, with these last few minutes, because I know you want to get into it a little bit, let's talk some Warriors. This different. I just switched up the overlay on us. Let's do it.
Slick. I like it. So, I got mine ready to go too. I haven't used it live yet, or maybe I did. I think I just flashed it, but definitely ready to start pivoting into a little Dubs talk.
So with the Warriors, for me, I don't think they're good enough to win a championship even when they get healthy. I've had discussions with Kevin about this actually, because he was saying how they kind of fumbled at the deadline, not getting OG Anunoby and throwing Kuminga in the deal or whatever, but I looked games last night. If I gave away Kuminga for someone like OG Anunoby, does that move me over Phoenix? I don't think so. Because Kevin Durant going to Phoenix, what I always told Suns fans out here in Arizona, because they're always saying the Suns always act like they're the golden standard. They're going to win the title. And I always told them, you're never going to win a championship if Devin Booker is the best player on your team. But if you get someone like Kevin Durant, that changes things because no one's going to defend him. Devin Booker becomes your second option. And Chris Paul, one big issue with him in the playoffs last year, wasn't really scoring. Now it doesn't matter. It just matters that KD and Devin Booker are showing up, and KD more than likely will show up. It's just about Devin Booker. With the Warriors, just when you can't defend anybody and you're fouling everybody and you turn the ball over at a terrible rate and you can't win on the road for some reason, which is really weird, I don't see you beating Phoenix. So even if you get OG Anunoby, what happens then? Wiggins is going to come back. He's going to start. OG Anunoby is going to come off the bench. I don't really think that moves the needle. I think what the Warriors kind of saw at the deadline, and maybe they would have been more willing to do it before the Phoenix trade, but once Phoenix got Kevin Durant, it became pretty obvious they have the upper hand over everybody in the West. I think they kind of looked at it as we need to get a perimeter defender, and they pivoted to getting Gary Payton back. And they're looking at it more as like, we saved a lot of luxury tax money by doing this, maybe we can bring back Draymond. And going into next offseason, we can see how we want to retool this. Maybe you trade Jordan Poole and just kind of go all in and get somebody else too and use that money to retain some guys. Or maybe it's just you find a way to afford all of them anyways, and there's some other ways you want to retool the bench. For me, the problem is the bench, they just don't fit well with each other. Like last year, you could see the fluidity they played with and the way they moved the ball around. They fit together. I don't think this bench really complements each other. Anthony Lamb is not someone who should be getting rotational minutes. JaMychal Green's not somebody who should be getting in the rotation. I like DiVincenzo, but the rest of the bench to me, other than Jordan Poole and DiVincenzo and Jonathan Kuminga, it's a wash. Like I would have taken JTA or Damian Lee. Like I would have been so happy if we ended up with a Damian Lee type player this year. That's how bad the bench was, and we knew how Damian Lee was the last few years. So I think that this year it's probably not realistic, but I think next year they'll be okay because if you have Steph and you have Clay and if you have Wiggins and if you find a way to retain Draymond, and I'm still good with Kevon Looney, obviously at center, getting another player like Gary Payton back, I think will dramatically change the way this team plays defense. He's an all NBA defensive type player that won't get the recognition because of the role he plays on teams. But he is that level of a defensive player. And I kind of see the bench right now as what they were hoping for. If Portland, shared the info that he was hurt, I think that they were looking at Jordan Poole, DiVincenzo, Gary Payton, Kuminga committing to Kuminga as the backup four instead of going to Anthony Lamb, JaMychal Green, and just having whoever at center. And we saw what Kuminga did last night. So that's how I see it. I could see them winning a series. I doubt they win two. I don't think they get past Phoenix. So I don't know what your thoughts are on the Warriors. It's just this bench is so atrociously bad. I know this person saying JTA, come on, but listen, dude, you're rolling out Anthony Lamb. I'll take JTA in a heartbeat, easily.
I mean, my thought was I thought they just needed to get a big in the buyout market to replace Bielitsa. I feel like we also miss Otto Porter. That
really miss Otto Porter.
Automatic was one of my faves last year. So I was really happy when we got GP2 back because I was crushed when we let him walk. He was rapidly becoming one of my favorite players. In fact, if you see my Warriors single frame overlay, it's courtesy of Mr. Roscoe's Mr. My player on there is GP2, even though he's injured, and we don't even know if he'll play this season. I think he will, though. I think he'll be back late. I don't know. I think it's hard to tell what this team is when we don't have Steph Curry. Wiggs has been out for a while now with personal issues, and GP2. I think those three they move the needle just a little bit. Can we beat Phoenix? I don't know. I haven't really been paying attention to how they've been doing, but again, it's a regular season. Playoffs, I don't trust Chris Paul in the playoffs. And I just, other than Durant, I don't think they know how to win big games in the playoffs. We saw them, lose to the Pelicans last year, the playoff Pels, I call them. So, everybody thought it was going to be us and them in the Western Conference Finals last year, and they didn't even make it. It ended up being the Mavs who beat them, and that we beat. I was there when we beat them at Chase Center for game, was it 5? I think we beat them 4-1. So, I'm not saying that we can beat the Suns, but I think we can win more than one series. And I'm not saying we can't beat the Suns either. I think that no team wants to play us if we're healthy and playing well with that lineup. Like I said, GP2, you're saying he's like maybe the best perimeter defender in the NBA, and he's more than that. He gets some fun dunks, and he's a pretty good post-up three shooter.
He's a good lob threat too.
Yeah, no, he's just a good guy all the way around. A really good. Somebody said they met him, and he was just like one of the greatest guys ever. I forget who it was. Somebody I had on the show who lives in a different market where he was in the G League there, and not the Santa Cruz Warriors, obviously. But anyway, bottom line is I'm a little more bullish on the Warriors if we can get healthy, if we can get GP2 back, if Wiggs is okay with his personal issues, and if Curry doesn't get injured again. I saw some Curry warm-up stuff coming. I mean, I'm really glad we didn't trade Kuminga for Anunoby.
Yeah.
All I know is when I was, last night I was on daddy duty and I saw we were down by almost 20 or 20 points with about 2 minutes to go in the second. And I was like, oh boy, the Blazers are going to blow us out. And the next thing I know, we're getting close. And then I see this, and I watched the end of the game and I see this highlight that maybe I missed of Kuminga with this just monster jam.
Yes.
And
yeah.
And I don't know, it's hard not to get a little excited. I mean, the one thing we know about the NBA is, you don't have to be the number one seed. I mean, obviously, you do have to win on the road if you're not the number one seed. But, for me, I've always said it's all about like health and be healthy, hot, and ready to go. Those healthy and hot are more important to me than seeding. So as long as we can get in, which still is a question mark when we're barely above 500, I don't know. We'll see. I guess we'll see as we go, but I'm a little more bullish. I'm not saying like I think we'll win the championship. I was definitely saying that in March of last year. I saw that coming together.
Yep.
Where I was starting to talk trash to Suns fans about this time last year. Just like setting up those receipts, and unfortunately they never even made it to cash in on those. But it'll be interesting to see. Yeah, I do think a big to replace Bielitsa though would be helpful.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, Anthony Lamb and JaMychal Green are just, I get it. Anthony Lamb can shoot threes, but that's kind of the problem this year. This team is shooting way too many threes. Like last year, when we were winning playoff games, we were winning in points in the paint. You don't have these bigs just can't score underneath the basket. And kind of what they did with the Gary Payton trade, they kind of had the option in the offseason to either commit to James Wiseman or move on from that and pay Gary Payton. They chose Wiseman. They kind of just reversed that decision. So I'm okay with that. And I love that they get to keep Kuminga. I'm going to roll with his potential instead of trading for Anunoby, who's going to have to be getting paid in a few years. He'll probably get a pretty big pay bump after we just paid Wiggins too. So I'm cool that I think that this year it's just they're so bad on the road and so bad on defense, and they foul everybody and they turn the ball over nonstop, which has kind of always been an Achilles heel, but it was never really combined with all those other things. And what kind of is weird to me is when Steph Curry comes back from injuries this year, it kind of feels like they immediately fall back into getting comfortable with allowing Steph Curry to carry them. And I think that's what's really weird, because we had that win streak when Steph Curry was out, and that's when I was the most hopeful, because I was looking at the Celtics the previous year for a while. I was like, oh, the Celtics started 16-19 the year before, and then they were 500 until they were 26-25. That was when they finally stayed over 500. So I was like, that's 50 games in the season. But with the injuries piling on, how much time are they going to have to mesh well? Because these other guys, they have not played with Gary Payton before. It's probably not going to be that big of a deal. But at the end of the day, I'm just kind of looking at it like, what is going on with Andrew Wiggins? Like, what's the status there? Because if you do play Phoenix, that's who you want guarding Kevin Durant. And the way I would see that matchup, like, Wiggins is not going to stop KD, but he's your best option to put on him. But Gary Payton, I've seen strap up Devin Booker sometimes. So that's where there's just so many unknowns too. I just need to see more, but it's at the point where it doesn't really feel like, it feels like the people who fear playing the Warriors, and there's Suns fans out here who told me the one team they don't want to play is us. And I told them, I think you got to worry about that, because this is not one of those years. This is not like last year, for instance, when we fell in the seeding, we were first place all year. It was the injuries that, like when Draymond went down and then when Steph Curry went down, that we dropped a couple spots. This year, we've always been outside the play-in, in the play-in, then we're a 6 seed, and then we're back to 10. It's, we've got 30 losses already, and we've got the rest of March to go. And I know a lot of that is based on injuries, but even when Steph Curry was here, we were losing. So that's what worries me, is the fact that the losses are not coming just from the fact that people are gone. We were losing when these guys were here, and that's what makes me not so confident. But we'll see. Maybe Gary Payton makes a really dramatic change. And I think, like I said, I think that takes Anthony Lamb out of the rotation a lot more. And I think that puts Kuminga as the backup 4, and they probably just try to survive with JaMychal Green with minutes at the backup center spot. So I think that could make a big change. Will it be enough? I don't think so. But also at the same time, kind of like the way we say any given Sunday in football, maybe you get to Phoenix and maybe Chris Paul, he gets injured a lot in the playoffs. I'm not trying to wish it, but it's just something that kind of happens. Maybe someone goes down that's really unfortunate for Phoenix, where it kind of gives you a puncher's chance. But even then, I think the NBA champion this year, if it's not Phoenix, it's going to come out of the East, just because the West, people say the West is like so good and it's so even. I've had some discussions, people saying that. I was like, no, they're just not good. Like the West is not very good. Like even Denver, they don't scare. Like I'll say this, I do think we would beat Denver if we were fully healthy. Like Denver's just kind of that team to me where we're going to pick on Jokic on defense every single possession with Steph Curry and pick and roll. And it might be harder than last year, but I still think we'd beat them. I don't like the regular season is so weird in the NBA where, like you said, seeding doesn't matter that much. And I think it's Phoenix's conference to lose, but I could see us beating a team like Denver in an upset. I could see that. I don't know about you.
When you say the East, do you mean like Celtics and Bucks? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, okay, I think those teams, and I think they'll play Phoenix, but if not Phoenix, then it is wide open. I don't think Memphis will make it. I think they're a bunch of pretenders. So it's really Phoenix's to lose. But
not if karma has anything to do with it. Those guys are bad actors. They don't deserve it. So
it's really bad.
No matter what happens, I hope they don't get it.
And I told Roscoe in a group chat last night, I was like, if the Grizzlies win tonight without LeBron, they're going to talk a lot and act up on social media probably. And when they won the game, the Grizzlies tweeted like a meme photo. Did you see that? Of like hold that L, and it was a picture of Shannon Sharp. Like,
yeah,
you guys won a game without LeBron James in March. Congratulations. You beat a 12 seed. Like, awesome job, guys. But yeah, NBA will be interesting. Let's see the next few weeks how it pans out. We need to see Steph Curry come back. We need to see what happens with Wiggins, and they'll make the playoffs. I don't think they'll fall out of the playoff picture. I think they'll make it. Clay's also, right before we go here, everyone better apologize to Klay Thompson. If you slandered Klay Thompson and called him washed, you better go apologize on the timeline. I was telling people for a long time, especially in the beginning of the season when he wasn't playing well, I was like, wait for winter. Because winter, he's going to get his legs under him. That's when it's going to matter. And then he had those 50. He's had the 50-point games, the 40-point games. He's had multiple games of 10 threes, 2 games of 12 threes. And with Steph Curry
started out 1 for 7 last night when I tuned in and we were down by 20.
And then later in the game,
now he ends up with 23 points. So
like that dude. Just put in perspective, I need to double check after the shooting last night, but he was actually scoring more and shooting a higher 3-point percentage than his season that he ended up tearing his ACL in 2019. Now, obviously, he's asked to do more right now because Steph Curry's been out a lot, but still, to go from people saying he's washed to now he's actually shooting a higher percentage than that, it's pretty crazy. But, Ted, do you have anything else to add before we go here?
No, I think I'm good. Just thanks for having me on, Chris. It's been a real pleasure as always. And go Dubs, go Niners.
Yeah, for sure, Ted. And make sure you tell everyone the name of your channel just in case they're not streaming from yours. Let them know where they can subscribe to.
Oh, sure. Yeah. At TedH6 on Twitter and TED Talks Ball on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to both our channels. Chris is doing great work, and that really helps us to do what we do for you guys to keep doing these shows.
Yeah, for sure, Ted. Thanks for coming on, and everybody listening, thank you for tuning in early in the morning. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're tuning in from Ted's channel, my channel is The Polo Show. You can also find me on Twitter at ChrisPolo, 2 underscores. Go ahead and follow me there. I'll be doing Niners and Warriors content. I'll do my best to keep up to date with Niners content. Obviously, the offseason can get kind of difficult, but with free agency coming up, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about. There's going to be players leaving, new guys we bring in. There's going to be the combine coming up. So definitely tune in, and we'll do a jersey giveaway probably at 350 subscribers for a Talanoa Hufanga jersey. But thank you, Ted, for joining. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Chris.
Wide open, touchdown, 49ers. And to Draymond. Purdy. Watch Stafford go deep, and Rodgers were able to do week 3 in that matchup. Toss to Jones, and big middle linebacker Fred Warner made the stop.
Bye.